when people hear personal brands, they tend to think, oh, that's for speakers or coaches or authors or TikTokers or YouTubers or podcasters.
Welcome to a special edition episode of the Game Changing Attorney Podcast featuring conversations with 6 top marketing experts.
74% of Americans say they are more likely to trust someone who has an established personal brand. 58% of Americans say they want their lawyer to have an established personal brand.
I'm Michael Mogul, founder and CEO of Crisp, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. Crisp started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer. Today, we're revisiting some of our most powerful conversations with marketing leaders who didn't just succeed, they changed the game. These guests have pushed boundaries, taken big swings, and shared strategies that actually drive results. In this episode, we'll break down the mindset, creativity, and tactics that set them apart.
Most of the people that are listening to this podcast probably don't have an issue with retention, but most of them suck at getting referrals. And the reason is because they don't have an intentional strategy about how they're showing up for their relationships. They're doing the same thing as all of their competitors, dinners, golf, all that stupid stuff. And it's fine, but it's table stakes. It's like only taking care of your wife on Valentine's Day and her birthday and anniversary. You don't earn brownie points for showing up on Valentine's Day. You earn brownie points with a relationship showing up on random Tuesdays with a spa package.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney Podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I want to remind you that we aren't beholden to any sponsors or run any ads on this podcast. This allows us to present all of our episodes raw and unfiltered. I'm not going to push any made-to-order meal services on you or try to save you any money on your car insurance. That being said, I have one small request. If you receive any value from this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. Pay the fee so we can keep this podcast free. Our first guest is Seth Godin, best-selling author, entrepreneur, and one of the most influential voices in modern marketing. His books, Purple Cow and This Is Marketing, have changed the way we think about branding, connection, and standing out. In this conversation, Seth breaks down what it really means to be an expert in your niche and why he's not a fan of the phrase niching down.
Well, I think part of it is because we use phrases like niching down. If I had to use a phrase, because I've never used that, is I would say focusing up. Because the fact is, when we go to buy anything, we don't say, other than ketchup, we don't say, what's the average one? We say, who's the expert? So if you need knee surgery, you're not going to say to your friends, who's a surgeon in Atlanta that can do everything, including dentistry? You're going to say, who's the #1 knee surgeon within 200 miles of here? And in fact, I have a left knee problem. I don't even want a right knee surgeon, just a left knee, please. Well, that's not niching down. That's becoming important. And we resist becoming important because the fact is, let's say you make the world's spiciest hot sauce. Some ketchup consumers will not like it because it is not average, because it is not boring. And the vast majority of people, by definition, are average. So if you want to make average stuff for average people, go ahead. There are a lot of people in the legal industry who, if they were telling the truth, could put up a billboard that says, if you need a lawyer, we're a lawyer. And that's not a positioning statement.
And let's speak to the topic of intent. You can't command people to laugh, right? And you really can't command anyone to feel a certain way, but you can choose the right ones. And it seems like this is what holds back a lot of artists and creatives and so on, in the sense that they worry that if they're very, very focused in the work that they're doing and they're very passionate about it, that might not resonate with everybody.
It definitely will not resonate with everybody. And so we're back to ketchup. The key is to pick the smallest viable audience. And I wrote about this in This Is Marketing. The smallest viable audience is counter to everything we are taught in this country. Smallest viable audience says, I will be very clear who this is for, and anybody else I will send to a competitor. And if you tell me that you believe this, and I say, how many people have you sent to other firms in the last 2 weeks? And you can't think of anybody, then you don't really believe it. And what it means is to say, for people who want blank, I have blank. Well, what is that? And how can you be clear about it? So Elvis Costello isn't for everybody. Spike Lee isn't for everybody. Cyrilla May isn't for everybody. Patricia Barber isn't for everybody. Okay, that's why they're for somebody. And so if you go to the Green Mill in Chicago when this pandemic is over on a Monday night at 9:00, you can sit and listen to Patricia Barber and her trio play jazz. There's only 125 people in the room because the room only fits 125 people. But in that 5-hour jam session, her life will get better and your life will get better, or you won't get the joke and you will leave. One or the other. But Patricia doesn't have to chase anybody because the people who get it are waiting in line.
And Seth, to your point, and I agree with you, and I actually argued this even in my book, which was a legal marketing book, but it seems that, focusing or going after a smaller audience, many times, I think even listeners hearing this, they might feel that is a privileged position to be in. And they say, well, Seth, that sounds great, but if I'm turning away all this business, how will I be able to really stay in business or grow my business? What are your thoughts on that?
If you don't, how are you going to grow your business? If you don't do that, then you're making average law for average people. And average law for average people would be fine if you were the only average lawyer in town, because there are a lot of average people in town. But you are not the only average lawyer in town. In fact, almost every lawyer is an average lawyer. So if I can't tell the difference between lawyer A and lawyer B, why will I pick you? And why would I want you to be cheaper? On the other hand, if I have an obscure copyright case about whether this is in the public domain or not, there's only 5 lawyers in America I would trust to take that case on. How do you become one of those 5? Well, you start by turning away people who want you to do personal injury cases, because you can't do both at the same time, right? So here's the deal. Law school is an industry, and it has churned out more lawyers than we need. And if you want to persist and still be a lawyer, given the surplus of lawyers, you have to be a different kind of lawyer, a specific kind of lawyer, not a general kind of lawyer. Now, there's one exception, and the exception is sometimes people need general. They need one human who can do 40 different kinds of law. If you're going to be that kind of lawyer, you have to be the best at doing all of them, which is its own form of Swiss Army knife. But most of the struggling lawyers I know, most of the lawyers I know who are unhappy with their work, cannot tell you why they are the one and only choice for a specific issue. And if you're not the one and only, of course you're exhausted because you're lying all day long.
Well, you talk about the difference between a hack, a failure, an amateur, and a professional, if you could speak to those.
I don't have anything against hacks, but we need to call them what they are. In London, when it was smaller, the borough of Hackney was on the outskirts of town, and they raised horses there. They didn't raise great horses. They raised good enough horses, average horses for average people. And they tended to be purchased by cab drivers, which is why London cab drivers came to be known as hacks, because they just had average stuff. It is possible to be a hack lawyer. And basically what you say to your clients is, what do you want? And you give them that. And you don't have a lot of trouble making sales if you show up enough times. And there's nothing wrong with being a hack. But then don't also believe that you are an artist, a professional, someone leaning deep into what your craft could be, because that's a different thing. So when Brian Stevenson builds a nonprofit that changes the justice system in parts of the United States, he's not being a hack. No one asked him to do that. He showed up to do it. And so if we're going to do this art, what it means is we don't get to just say to the customer, whatever the customer is, do you want fries with that? Right? McDonald's doesn't make art. McDonald's is a hack. But Ray Kroc, when he started McDonald's, that was an art, because maybe it wouldn't work. No one had ever done it before. What are the rules? How do I invent the next thing? So that's the fork in the road. And the trap is thinking you're doing one thing when you're actually doing the other one. And I would just put as an aside, having lived in the NYU Law School dorm for a year, almost entirely law school teaches lawyers to be hacks.
Now, I know that's the hack, but it seems like you could be one worse, right? The failure, because at least the hack is persistently serving his audience.
That's correct. There are lots of ways to fail. One way to fail is to insist that everybody get your joke, to insist that you are entitled to a commission for your symphony, that you are entitled to have a standing ovation for the work you just did, that you're entitled to win your case before the Supreme Court. You're not entitled. It doesn't come with any guarantee. And so part of what it is to be a professional, to do this creative art, is to have empathy for the audience, to say, they might not know what they want, but I have a hunch that this is going to resonate with them. And that distinction is super important because, I would argue Steve Jobs led, whereas Tim Cook is a hack. Tim Cook hasn't had one innovation in the last 8 years, not one product or insight that changed anybody's life. Whereas Jobs did it every year or two because he was willing to fail, and he failed a lot. Whereas Apple just sort of mundles through now, makes their stock price go up because the stock market really likes hacks, but it doesn't last.
And there was this fascinating concept you mentioned towards the end of the book, where the notion of seeking out constraints, in the sense that, oftentimes an abundance of resources is what kind of breaks down resourcefulness and creativity and innovation. And this is interesting because I know many entrepreneurs, when they're starting their business and they don't have many resources, but they have many constraints, they're forced to be innovative. They're forced to think creatively. I think the example you gave was even the band REM. What are your thoughts in terms of why one should seek out constraints?
Well, so if you do some Googling or look in YouTube, you will see that there's this group of magicians that have created videos that will blow your mind. Every magician uses exactly the same deck of cards. That's a constraint. When REM was midway through their career, they were starting to burn out. So they invented constraints. They switched instruments. They made an entire album in which, I don't remember which member, Peter or whatever, played the mandolin. Like he'd never played the mandolin before. Constraints. And it turns out constraints are something to lean against. They're the edge of the box. You can't think outside the box. It's too dark. But on the edge of the box, you have something to lean against. So these constraints, I only practice this kind of law. I only have that kind of client. I only do interactions that last this long. I only hire people. Whatever you want to say, these constraints force you to go to the edges. And the internet makes it look like everything is possible, but everything is only possible if you're willing to be completely mediocre at it. It takes focus and bravery to be great at something.
Seth Godin reminds us that the key to standing out is focusing up, becoming the go-to expert in your space. But once you've found your niche, how do you build a personal brand that actually sticks? That's where Rory Vaden comes in. He's a master of personal branding and believes it's not just about being known, it's about being known for something that matters. I asked Rory why that distinction is so important.
Let me give you some data points. I know you have a very intelligent audience, and we are very data-driven. And so one of the things that we did is we invested about $100,000 in conducting the first national research study on personal branding. So it's called Trends in Personal Branding National Research Study. We went out and we asked Americans all of these questions related to this, and we found that 74% of Americans say they are more likely to trust someone who has an established personal brand. 74%. And when you stratify that data down by generations, we know that for millennials, it's 85%, and for Gen Z, it's 79%, which means that this trend is going to continue more in the next 20 years, where people are making their decisions based on the personal brands. And a lot of times, Michael, I think when people hear personal brands, they tend to think, oh, that's for speakers or coaches or authors or TikTokers or YouTubers or podcasters. And so we actually dug into that and we asked the question, well, which industries does it matter most for someone to have a personal brand? And some of the data behind this is absolutely shocking, because the very industries that you wouldn't think would matter, but they do matter, there's a really big reason why. So this was the question we asked: how important is it to you that each of the following have an established personal brand? So the number one profession today that people say they want to have an established personal brand is their doctor. 61% of Americans say they want their doctor to have an established personal brand. Number 2 is their employer. 59% of Americans say it matters to them that their employer has an established personal brand, that they know who they are, they can see who they are in real life. Number 3, out of all industries, according to the general population of America, is lawyers. 58% of Americans say they want their lawyer to have an established personal brand. Next down from that is financial advisors, bankers, insurance agents. And here's what we discovered. It's really simple. Even though on the surface, we all think, oh, personal branding is for YouTubers and TikTokers, in reality, it's not. The higher the requirement for trust in your trade or profession, the more important having an established personal brand becomes. And a lot of that comes down to understanding what a personal brand is, which we now define based on the data that came out of the study, that people think of personal branding as like, oh, that's social media, or it's your website, or it's your fonts, or it's your logo, it's like your colors. And to us, we go, no, this is much more fundamental than that. The way that we define it is that personal branding today is simply the digitization of your reputation. The number one way that people are monetizing their personal brand today is not information products. It's not brand deals. The number one way that personal brands are monetizing today is they're just using their personal brand to drive leads into their existing business for the thing they already do. That is the fastest path to cash. It's the most effective one, and it aligns up with the data. So for your audience in particular, which I have never been in front of a group of just lawyers like this having this conversation, it's fun to do it because it's like, it's hyper relevant to the way that y'all operate and to the future of how this, at least the data says that this industry is headed.
I love it. Now, for somebody who's, is thinking to themselves like, yeah, I really need to build my personal brand, but I don't have really one today, at least not one by design. I'd like to have one tomorrow. What advice do you have for them in terms of like how long does this take, right? And I'm sure that the results are, it depends and it varies just depending on what they're trying to do. And let's say in their professional services business, but it's certainly not an overnight type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, how long does it take you to build a great reputation in real life, right? Like in the offline world. In some ways, it's that same thing. Now, the biggest personal brands in the world, in terms of the ones with the most audience, the biggest followers, the biggest podcasts, they're not necessarily the most gifted. They're not necessarily the most talented. They're not even the ones that are necessarily most divinely orchestrated. The people with the biggest personal brands today are the ones who have the most sophisticated systems. They have the most sophistication on their content creation, and they're measuring everything and they're optimizing everything to reach more people. It's much more of a science than it is an art. We make it into a science and layer the science on top of the art, but the science is much more predictable. Everything from becoming a New York Times bestselling author. I mean, we've helped 5 people do that last quarter. It's not through hacks and gimmicks and cheats, but it is through understanding what's the mechanisms that drive that, what's the volume of people that are required to buy a book for that to happen, and then how can we create enough attention in a short enough window to create that effect. And then, all of a sudden you go, oh, well, I'm a Hall of Fame speaker and a New York Times bestselling author, and I've got, 500,000 social media followers and 5 million downloads on my podcast. And suddenly you go, oh, I guess I'm one of the biggest personal brands in the world, and people pay me to speak on the biggest stages in the world. Like your events, you guys put on one of the best events in the world, and you get some of the best speakers and you pay them because they're these people. But there's probably customers that you have that are equally, if not more talented than the speakers you pay to be on your stage. They're just not as well known. They might have stories that are just as inspiring. They might be as intelligent. They might have accomplished things that are just as amazing. They're just not as well known, and that is what drives demand, right? So reputation precedes revenue. So that's a long way of answering, how long does it take? It depends on how fast you want to go. People can move the needle in a year. And that, I think, is true in anything in your life. I mean, you're 1 year away from a completely different life if you go at it hard for 365 days. So, somewhere between 1 year and 20.
I like it. And Rory, I know you mentioned a lack of focus as a pretty common mistake. What are some other mistakes that you see, leaders and entrepreneurs make when they're trying to build their personal brands, and what are some things they can do to avoid, some of these pitfalls?
A lack of focus is definitely the number one mistake. Diluted focus, diluted results. A close second, probably, maybe a distant second, but definitely second that's far away from whatever number 3 is that they trade their reputation too much for pursuing transactions instead of pursuing trust. In other words, they're chasing vanity metrics. It's amazing. Someone will spend their whole life becoming an expert, and then suddenly they go online and they feel like they need to sell everyone a $7 ebook because that's what the latest webinar is that they watched. There's a lot of people that make money teaching you how to do that, and that's fine. There's times when a $7 ebook makes sense. But for most of your audience, right, you're intelligent. You spent a life developing genuine expertise that is worth a lot of money. There's a good chance for most of the people listening to this that you'll never sell a course or a membership site or an ebook. You could. There might be reasons why to do that. But the number one fastest path to cash would be to teach your advice for free in small bite-sized chunks in all random miscellaneous order, and be focused on automating trust. And then what happens is you go, all right, let me teach you how merger and acquisitions work. And let me tell you the story anonymously of a client I worked with. And here's the things that were wrong with their agreement. And here's the things they didn't flesh out. And here's what happened when we litigated the issue. And here's what I've seen in settlement discussions and da-da-da-da-da. And when somebody is going, wow, like this person knows a lot about business acquisition and valuation and M&A. When I go to sell my business, who am I going to call? I'm going to call this person. You don't have to sell me a course. I don't need a course. I need you to sell my company. You didn't get paid for years of producing all of that content, but you got paid millions of dollars off of one customer who followed you, and you automated trust. And so that's where I think you don't need to cheapen your brand. You don't need to cheapen your expertise. You can just be an expert. You also don't have to do dancing videos on TikTok. You can just teach what you know for free. You can teach everything you know for free because people don't pay for information anyways. People pay for application. Information is available all over the place. So people aren't paying for information. They're paying for application. They want it done for them. And the more they learn about it, the more they learn how complicated and nuanced it is. And the more they're like, yeah, I just need to hire someone to solve this problem for me. So that's what I think you're going to do is you're going to drive free calls. So don't cheapen it. So I would say be focused on automating trust. Don't be so focused on short-term transactions. It's long-term trust is so much greater than short-term transactions. And there's something about in real life, you would never just walk up to somebody off the street and be like, hey, I'm a lawyer. Do you need my services? Or try to sell them something. You would get to know them. You'd build a relationship with them. You'd try to add value to them. But yet somehow when we put a camera on people, they feel like they have to go into salesman mode somehow and start pitching everybody. And it's don't. Approach it more with the heart of a teacher and let your reputation speak for itself. Let your expertise speak for itself. And as you do that, people, they will trust you. And trust must take place before there's a transaction. And the tools of the day, the digitization of reputation, we just happen to live in the most amazing time in human history to be able to automate trust at scale.
Rory Vaden makes the case for building a strong personal brand. But once you've got that, how do you create content that turns your audience into superfans? Pat Flynn, a best-selling author and pioneer in digital content creation, believes it all comes down to quality and connection. I asked Pat about quality versus quantity when it comes to creating great content.
You want both, right? You want a lot of really good things, and that's ideal. But I think that if you just start with quality, the quantity will come, right? Whenever you create good content, Google will eventually rank it at the top of Google, and people will find it and share it, and people will talk about it because it's so good quality, right? You could have 1,000 YouTube videos out on your YouTube channel, and they could all be not so great, and you'll get hardly any subscribers. sometimes you can have 1 or 2 videos that are amazing that help you gain millions of views, right? So I'm definitely more of a quality game. And a lot of this ties back into something that I once heard Gary Vaynerchuk talk about, and that's what's called small town rules. And what small town rules is, if you remember, well, I don't remember, but like way back in the day, let's say, early 1900s or late 1800s, right? With small towns, you kind of knew everybody who was in the city and in the town that you were in, and you built relationships with them. You would go to Bob's Bakery because not just they had really good bread, but because when you walked in, Bob would greet you and they would ask you how your kids were doing and how's the soccer game this past weekend or whatever. And it felt really special, so special that if a new grocery store chain opened up between you and Bob's Bakery, you would still trek a little bit further to go to Bob because you have that relationship with Bob, and then you know about their family and they know about you. And this is the kind of thing that I think social media and online has always had the opportunity to do, but I think we've been trying to scale too fast and automate everything, and we just forgot about the fact that there are actual human beings on the other end who, if you just make them feel special, if you paid a little bit of attention to them, they're going to want to continue to come back, but also share what you have as well. And like you were saying, you don't need a lot in order for great things to happen. I was inspired, in fact, to write this book and actually do my presentation initially from an article that was written in 2005 or 2006 by a man named Kevin Kelly. He's a senior editor of Wired magazine, and he wrote a very famous article called 1,000 True Fans. This article was more of a piece for artists and musicians, but also entrepreneurs as well, that basically said, well, you don't need a blockbuster hit to do really well. You don't need 1 million subscribers. You don't need 1 million views on anything. You just need to try to get 1,000 true fans. A true fan being somebody who, if you're a musician, they're going to drive 8 hours to see your set and then wait for you backstage to, get your autograph. Or if you have a product that comes out, they're not even going to read the sales page. They're going to buy it because they've already gotten to know you and what you have to offer. If you have 1,000 of those, for example, and they are paying you $100 a year for your art, your craft, your goods, whatever it might be, that's not very much. When we're fans of something, we'll sometimes spend way too much on things, right? 1,000 people times $100 a year is already a 6-figure business. For just 1,000 people, and to put that into perspective, that's 1 fan a day for less than 3 years. And people are spending, decades trying to build a business where, what if you just focused on those experiences 1 a day for 1 person and build those fan bases? I mean, it could do really well for you, and then you can grow the business from the inside.
What are some of the things you've seen? Like, why do we become fans of different brands and different businesses? What really leads to that, right? Because, I mean, for example, anyone that I know that has a Peloton, they're obsessed with Peloton. Same thing goes with like Apple products. I once heard something
Tesla.
that like people can't name 5 people in their life that don't own a single Apple product. Tesla, as you mentioned, like what leads to this? Is it experiential? Like what are some of the components of that?
I mean, there's definitely, okay, this company made me feel great, right? And if you're on a Peloton, for example, there's a few things that happen sort of psychologically. I'm not a psychiatrist or anything like that, or a psychologist, but I do know that, number one, you have really good feelings when you finish a workout, right? You have these endorphins, you're feeling really great. And of course, because it's this like magnificent piece in your living room or whatever, you might take a picture and snap a photo of it, and then you get positive feedback from your friends who are like, great job, you're doing awesome. So what made that happen? The Peloton. Okay, I'm going to get on the Peloton again, and I'm going to keep sharing that experience. There's also, I mean, we had mentioned, it's interesting that we mentioned like Apple and Tesla and Peloton, which are like higher tier, high class sort of products, right? There is something to be said for just the status of what that product could give you, right? And how that makes you feel. But it doesn't mean you have to create a high-end product in order for people to have this. I mean, I know some people who are fans of, there's a brand, for example, of men's shorts. And excuse the name of this, but this is the name of it. It's called Chubbies is the name of the brand. Yep. And they have a massive fan base. And they just sell shorts. But their brand identity is something that people can relate to. Because when you go to their website, it's like a dude with a beard and glasses at the lake with super short shorts with the American flag on it, flipping burgers with his friends in the background, chilling, having a great time. And that's like the weekend barbecue guy. These are your shorts that you're going to get because that's the brand that you can relate to. So I think more than just like the product, it's the feeling. And I know in my brand, I try to make people feel like a lot of this stuff is not as overwhelming as it may seem. So they might go elsewhere and go, wow, Pat, you've been able to deconstruct this in a way that allows me to actually be able to start a podcast or to be able to start a business in a way that I never thought was possible for me. I often try to inject small, quick wins, which is a big strategy that anybody can do to allow for people to go, wow, I'm already getting a result here. I need to come back for more, which taps into sort of a person's reptilian part of their brain. And then more than that, I just try to, give people even just a little bit of time and attention to a point where sometimes, and I do this every Friday, I take my dogs on a walk every Friday, and I have my phone with me, and I'm just sending direct messages to people who have recently commented on my Instagram post, direct message, so it's not public, to just say, hey, thanks, Michael. Thanks for commenting on that latest picture. I hope you're having a great week, and I wish you the best weekend ever. And that's it. No agenda whatsoever. And I'll tell you, people's minds are blown. They couldn't believe that I had spent all this time to craft a message when literally it's like 10 seconds in a video. And I'll tell you, that goes a very, very long way. So a question would be for everybody listening is like, when was the last time you reached out to maybe a client that you hadn't spoke to in a while, or from a case maybe a year or two ago? Like, reach out, just see how they're doing with literally no agenda than just to see how they're doing. Because when you keep those relationships open, what you're doing is you're digging your well before you're thirsty. There could be a time in the future where you might need something. And if you don't dig your well, if you're digging your well when you're thirsty, it's already too late. So keeping in touch like that and giving people just a little bit of time and attention, which people crave, it's human nature, can really go a long way in building your brand and building these super fans.
I imagine this is going to come up a lot as we're talking about this stuff. Someone's going to hear the things we're saying and they're going to think, well, how do I scale that? I've got, thousands of clients. I can't be writing everybody a handwritten card or, just are calling every single client that we have. And I believe what you're actually presenting is the fact that you don't have to scale it times 1,000, but because the quality of those connections matters a lot. Like, you don't have to message every single person that, that follows you on Instagram, but being able to message some people individually can make a huge impact.
If you are just starting out and you do have the time to answer everybody, do it. I mean, I would highly recommend that. There is power in being small, the ability for you to have more connections with a larger part of your audience versus, a huge brand or a bigger brand in your space who just doesn't have the time to do that. If you're starting out small is your advantage for sure. But over time, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. And the question is, well, do you have to scale everything? I remember sharing this strategy with somebody, and they were like, okay, I have a great idea to scale this. I'm like, just do it. And they're like, no, I'm gonna record a video for all the Johns, and I'm gonna record a video for all the Britneys. Like, they were like looking up the top 100 names. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, this is taking you more time to research how to do this, and you're gonna have to, it's not gonna be boring for you. It's not gonna be real, versus just pick up the phone. Like I told them to do it. I was like, pick up the phone, message that guy right there. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. Not everything has to be scalable. I think things should be optimized. I think things can be scalable, and there should be funnels in place in your business, and things that are automated or things that software takes care of or things that other people and team take care of so that you can focus on what you need to do the most. But in many ways, I think this doesn't have to scale that much. That being said, there are ways, especially in the sort of community sector, to scale this sort of feeling of community and super fandom. For example, one thing I love to do is invite not just like Tim Ferriss and Gary Vaynerchuk and all these other amazing entrepreneurs on my podcast, which is great, and those always do really well. But I also love to invite my own students on, people who have, for example, taken my courses or who read a blog post, did the thing, and then got a result. I bring them on, I showcase their story, I make them look like the hero. And what does that do? It makes everybody else in the community feel more connected to all the work that we're doing here, right? By just even sharing one person's stuff publicly, I am scaling, I am connecting with them, but I'm also bringing these good feelings of people who maybe they're going to reaffirm their decision to work with this brand, or maybe they go, wow, I didn't think I could do it. This person was just like me. They went through the same exact struggles. There's no excuse. I'm going to do it. And so a lot of this sort of community spotlighting could be really great. The ability for you to co-create with your people, with your clients, with your community, have them not necessarily dictate exactly every move the business should make, but there are likely opportunities to get your audience involved and get them engaged and get them interested in what you're doing by saying, hey, we have a decision to make and we wanted to get you involved. You want to go here or you want to go there? We've seen big companies do this. We've seen, M&M, not the rapper, but like the candy, go to their audience and go, hey, what should the next flavor be? What should the next color of the M&M be? Or, different Pepsi and Coke have done this. Domino's has gotten their audience involved in this way. But at the small level, it's even more powerful because a person can really have a true feeling that they're having a direct impact on where the business is going. And again, it's like the difference between, I don't know if you remember back in the day, I don't even know if they still exist, but you'd go to restaurants or a fast food place or whatever, some establishment, and there'd be a comment box with like some cards. And if you had a complaint, for example, it's like, oh, I'm going to angrily scratch this on here and I'm going to drop it in there. And what happens? It probably never gets seen or goes to the shredder. Versus nowadays, we have direct access to people and we can allow them to engage with us and to provide feedback, and then we can respond a lot more quickly, right? I think there was a study that was done where this is great because it also shows you don't have to always get it right. You could actually make mistakes, and that can actually help you get more fans, right? There was a study that was done with hotels that hotels got higher ratings when they made mistakes and solved those problems, or had done something incorrect and then stepped up to correct those problems, versus just hotels that were just great, like everything worked out perfectly. People really appreciate when somebody or a company sees them and steps up, and of course, when a person is involved, they're going to be invested.
Pat Flynn's approach to building Superfans is all about bringing value and creating memorable experiences. When it comes to making clients feel appreciated, few did it better than the late John Ruhlin. Known as the guru of strategic gifting, John showed how the right gift can not only deepen relationships, but also drive business growth. I asked John how he got his start and how his experience turned into a philosophy of thoughtful giving that continues to inspire people today.
I was going to get out of Dodge. I wanted to go make money and not be poor. And you know, when you grow up poor, you think like doctors make money or lawyers make money. And my mom was into health and wellness. So I went my mom was shipping in like vitamins from Nature Sunshine and stuff like early on. Like she was really into health and wellness, even though we were poor. She knew health was important. And so I was going to go be a doctor. I was going to be a DO or a chiropractor. And my life changed. I interned with Cutco to pay for med school at 20. I basically was just like, I'll commit to doing this for 6 weeks, because I didn't have sales experience. I didn't have wealthy friends or family. And the knives are like Cutco is like the Rolex of cutlery. It's a $300 million company, handmade in New York. It's like, it's not like, hey, I can buy a set for, $30. Like a full Cutco kitchen's $12,000. So when I interned with them, I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to sell one knife. But my life really kind of shifted and changed, because I pitched it to my girlfriend's dad, who was my fourth appointment. He was an attorney. He owned this law firm, and he had a great law firm, but he was the guy in town that was like always buying things and being generous. He'd find a deal on noodles, give everybody like at church the next Sunday, like 300 people, like, a year's supply. And I'm like, Paul, it was like $40,000. Are you nuts? And he just always got this smile on his face. It's just who he was. So when I pitched him the knives, I thought he'd maybe have mercy on me and buy a set for himself. He bought a set for himself, his 3 daughters that weren't even married. And then I pitched him again, thinking he's always giving things away. Maybe he'll buy pocket knives, because all of his clients are men. They're like $1 million to $1 billion companies, privately owned, insurance companies, financial advisor firms, home builders, lumber yards, and they all like hunting and fishing. And I pitched him 100 pocket knives. Now these are $100 pocket knives. So it's not like, hey, Paul, like spend $50 with me total. It's like, this was a thousands of dollars kind of proposition. I'm sweating bullets, and he's got this smile on his face. He's probably 60 at the time. And he said, John, I don't want to order 100 pocket knives, but I would be interested in 100 paring knives. I'm like, Paul, what do you want to give a bunch of dudes, CEOs of companies, like a kitchen tool? I'm like, why? That doesn't even make sense. And he said, John, in 40 years in business, the reason I have more referrals, deal flow, access, is I found out one simple truth. And that was, if you take care of the family in business, everything else seems to take care of itself. So for me, I realized it really wasn't about the stupid knives. Although to this day, like we'll sell millions of dollars of knives. Not because of the knife. The knife is a delivery vehicle for an emotion. I started to realize that Paul was a relationship builder, a relationship master. And so I started to go not pitch knives. The reason we landed the biggest deals in the world is I started to get referred to other business owners. So I would find a CEO of like a $200 million insurance company I'm going to get a meeting with. I'd send them some knives, little handwritten notes. They'd carve out some time for me, promise to move with your time. And I get the meeting, go in, pitch him. And he, like when I walked in, I'm wearing like the one suit I have. I'm green as can be. I'm 21 years old. In walks the CEO, and like it's like out of a movie, like the mahogany boardroom, like old leather. And he's like, are you the John Ruhlin that sent me the knives? I'm like, yes, sir. He's like, man, I thought you'd be like some seasoned sales executive in their 50s. He's like, are you here to sell me knives? And I said, no, sir, I'm here to help you and your 1,000 sales reps do exactly what I did to you, to your top 10,000 relationships. So I walked out of there with a PO for 1,000 knife sets. So most people would sell one knife set to one homeowner. I was going in and using what we now call giftology, but really it was gratitude, generosity as a strategic way to build relationships. And because of that, we were really showing people how to get ROI. Like we'd have clients invest $10,000 and get back $1 million. And, most of the time with Facebook ads or whatever else, like you get a 3X, you're doing like a dance. And we were showing people how to use this new way of really marketing to build relationships. And so by the time I was a senior in college, Cutco has worked with over 7 years. That 1.5 million number is probably pushing 2 million at this point. And we became their number one distributor in the history of the company, because we really were like using their product in a whole new system of how to build relationships. So we started to get referred to pro sports teams, all these other people, but it wasn't about the stupid knives. It's still not about the dumb knives. It's about how do you make connections with people and how do you stay top of mind and how do you include all the different things that we teach in our system. The knives, they plug and play so well to it. So to this day, it's one of our top, even in 2020, it was one of our top gifts.
Many CEOs believe the act of giving a gift sounds nice or may even be sentimental. But the question many ask is, what is the return on investment, or ROI, that they can expect from it? I asked John to elaborate on the business case for thoughtful giving.
I just got off Vaynerchuk's podcast, and we talked specifically about this. Most people's long game is days, not decades. And yet, if you look at most law firms, like they're building long-term, multi-decade relationships with these people, but they're not treating them as if this is going to be a 10-year, a 20-year, a 30-year. They're making the investment oftentimes saying, what have I got from that person lately? If I haven't got a referral from them lately, I'm not sending them a gift. And I'm like, you have it backwards. If you love on people and inspire them, they'll go refer deals. And so here's a great example. I went to a mastermind. You go to masterminds, different things like, to go hang out with people. And one of the guys I meet is the CEO, founder of one of the top, if not the largest financial advising coaching companies at the highest level. This guy's named John Bowen. It's called CEG, used to own a private equity company. Like he's played in that world really, really well, very white collar. And so I go into my pitch. I own this gifting agency. We help you outsource all of your gifts. We send love bombs. We drive referrals. We, in some cases, anywhere from a 10 to 1,000x ROI. And his response was, oh, that's cute. Oh, you own a gifting company. And you could tell like immediately he's like writing me off. And he's like, John, we do gifts. Yeah, we do some swag. We do some baskets, Christmas, whatever. Like probably not for me. My industry, I'm taking care of 7-figure advisors, guys that are making 7 figures or more. Probably not a fit for me. So I'm like, okay, farm kid, chip on my shoulder. Like, so we leave the event. I spent probably an hour with this guy. So I start sending him gifts for his wife. And I had my team do the research, found out his wife's name is Jan, started sending some knives. Hey, thanks for carving out the time. Now this is not cheap knives. These are like $300 to $500 gifts. So if I took him out to dinner, what it would cost. Found out his wife's, name and put her initials on a leather bag and some other things. Didn't ask for anything. 6 months go by. I had his number saved. I get a phone call from John. Pick it up. Hey, John, what's going on? And he's like, John's John Bowen. And he's like, I met you at this event, 6 months ago. You started sending these gifts. I thought they were cool, but I was like, whatever. 5 minutes later, I forgot about it. And then 3 months in, my wife, Jan, we're going to bed and she brings up your name. Hey, have you done anything with John Ruhlin lately? He's like, I thought that was kind of weird. It's kind of an anomaly. And then a week later, she asks again before bed, hey, have you done lunch with John? And he's like, John, I feel like I'm sleeping with your sales rep. Like, this is insane. He's like, do you really think this would work in financial services? I said, if you follow the recipe, it will. And so we walked through like what it would be for his top, about 200 advisors, all 7-figure earners. He's having this event for the 5th year outside of San Francisco. And he fights me the whole time. I don't know the wives' names because 99% of these dudes are married white dudes. I don't know wives' names. I'm like, if you don't get the wives' names, the deal's off. He's like, you're not going to take my money? I'm like, no. Unless you get the wives' names, deal's off. He's like, it's going to take a lot of time. So his assistant's tracking down people's wives' names and whatever else. He's like, can't we just give the gifts at the event? I'm like, nope, you got to do this way. Fights the recipe the whole time. I'm like, either do it well or don't do it at all. So we go through the whole dog and pony show. We send out these gifts. It was knives, $200 per person, just as a taste, because he didn't want to commit to thousands of dollars right out the gate. I'm like, that's fine. Spend $200-$300 each. And so we send him out. He has the event. Afterwards, against my recommendation, he has this survey of an assessment. And at the end, it talks about asking for referrals. Like, who do you know that would be a good fit for this coaching? That basically asking for peers. And he's like, John, I triple checked the numbers. Our referrals in the last 5 years have been about the same. They went up 107%. And the only thing we did different were your stupid gifts. I laughed. I said, you're probably going to buy a few more gifts, aren't you? And he's like, I sure as hell am. Why did it work? Well, it worked because of the recipe. A lot of people send stuff, like Amazon can send stuff really efficiently. So people fight me all the time. Like, why would I do the knives? Why would I do this? It seems expensive. And at the same time, they'll go take their clients out to Morton's and drop $500 a person and buy expensive champagne and wine and whatever else. And most people will do their biz dev, their relationship building, especially guys, very experiential, very like dinner, golf, cigars, whatever else. Gifting is an area where most people, it's like a I'll check the box at Christmas. And if you do it really well, most people think they're a 7 out of 10 on gifting, and really they're a -3. And so the 107% referrals, which by the way, a referral to him was worth 25 to 50 grand a year, and a typical client stayed for 5 years. So what's that worth to him? It's worth anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 for one referral, and they went up 107%. So when people push back, they're like, what's the ROI? I'm like, it's not ROI, it's ROR, it's return on relationship. If you want to get 3x return on Facebook ads, that's fine. But if you looked at your overall marketing budget and relationship and biz dev and you country clubs and sporting events and whatever else, you don't have to take all of that money and invest in giftology. But imagine if you took 20% of it and started investing in your relationships this way, and you increased your referrals, not by 107%. That's not, sometimes it'll be higher than that, but even 10%. Most advisors, most, wealth managers, most CPAs, most, law firms, like a referral is gold. You might have that client for 20 years. Most of the people that are listening to this podcast probably don't have an issue with retention, but most of them suck at getting referrals. And the reason is because they don't have an intentional strategy about how they're showing up for their relationships. They're doing the same thing as all of their competitors, dinners, golf, rounds of golf, all that stupid stuff. And it's fine, but it's table stakes. It's like only taking care of your wife on Valentine's Day and her birthday and anniversary. You don't earn brownie points for showing up on Valentine's Day. You earn brownie points with a relationship showing up on random Tuesdays with a spa package. If you want to build relationships, you have to be different than your competitors. And gifting is the one that people are like, oh, that seems weird. It seems woo-woo. And I'm like, great. If everybody was a great gift giver, it'd just be marketing noise. But because most people suck at it and are uncomfortable with it, they avoid it. And I'm like, that's awesome. We'll work with the 2% of people that get it, and we'll crush all of their competitors because nobody is doing this.
John Ruhlin's approach, known as giftology, teaches us the value of building thoughtful relationships. But how do you integrate these personal touches into your broader marketing strategy? Conrad, Saam, and Sakalakis are experts in legal marketing, and they break down the difference between strategies and tactics and how to effectively navigate the noise in today's digital landscape.
The tactics are to get you where you want to go. And the strategy is overall, what are we doing? Are we trying to grow by X%? Are we trying to minimize our costs? What is the mix of all the different tactics that we can put together to get to where we want to go? And I think one of the fallacies that happens in legal frequently is you'll get the firms that look at other firms. Well, they're doing this. We need to do that because they started a TikTok channel, and they see what other people are doing. Oh, they're advertising on billboards. We need to do billboards. It really depends where you want to go, and having an understanding of where you want to go, having a strategy, and then putting the tactics in place to get there, that's the key. My bias is most law firms look at what other law firms are doing and wish they could be doing those things. They don't understand what it actually takes to do those things, nor where those things will get them, but they think they should be doing those things. And on the flip side, the agencies are often like, I do pay-per-click, so I'm a tactical genius. You need more pay-per-click. Well, maybe we should be doing, no, you need pay-per-click. It's the world's a nail and I'm a hammer kind of problem. And so you have those misalignments. I think that's where it comes from.
Just to kind of dovetail on that, the tactics thing, all it results in is these random acts of marketing, right? Chasing shiny objects, new platform comes out, I got to get on there. Maybe you're copying somebody else, which I always find that one to be so funny because like the whole point of marketing is to stand out, and your first instinct is to go copy somebody. Like that's antithetical to standing out, is doing what somebody else is doing. Strategies, like that's like the blueprint, right? It's the game plan. What are we trying to do? The tactics are the pieces that get you there, but so many people are so focused on the tactics, right? Like I got to know what's the magic bullet. We talk about this with lawyers all the time. I'm sure you do too. They don't teach business in law school, right? And so it's kind of like an afterthought to folks. So like they're like, I know I need to do this thing, whatever it is, website, search ads, social media. I got to do this stuff, but it's like drive-by. It's like I'm not actually thinking about a cohesive plan for a destination, whether it's growth, whether it's trying to achieve some kind of business metric. And then so you start doing stuff. And then it's like, sometimes you look at it and you're like, yeah, what you're doing over here is actually completely antithetical to the tactic you're doing over here. There's no cohesive plan.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And it's, in my mind, everything works. Newsletters work, billboards work, TV works, social works, SEO works. I mean, direct mail, it all works. I mean, there's somebody who's having success with it. And yet, when somebody bounces around in different tactics, it almost seems like they either don't give it enough time, they don't give it enough investment, or there's just not a clear strategy in place. Because if we really get down to like what is marketing, to me, it's always been amplification of a message. You just invest more in getting certain message out. And if that is not the right message, it doesn't work. If it's going, right message, wrong audience, it doesn't work. Right audience, wrong message, and just any permutation of that.
But it seems like many people don't love to have the hold up conversation of, well, let's figure out what your goals are. Let's figure out what we're trying to do and what the plan looks like and how we're going to measure it. And let's just start running the ads, right? Or let's just start doing the newsletters.
I don't know why I always fall back on this analogy, but a lot of it's like dieting or going to the gym, right? Like people are like, try a new kind of fad diet. That's the tactic, right? Oh, I'm just not going to eat carbs, right? Or, there's this new workout where I can only spend 5 minutes doing it. 2-minute abs. You can get abs in 2 minutes. Like, oh my gosh, I got to do that. Versus being like, what are you really trying to do? Lose weight? Are you trying to like gain mass? Marketing is the same. Business is the same thing. It's like, what are you really trying to do? And it's work. It's the discipline of day in. Talk about amplifying messages. Like every single day going to the gym. It's every single day finding that message, like analyzing the numbers, like looking at like what the feedback is. Like, is it working? That's work. No one wants to do that, right? Everybody wants to like, oh, what's the tactic? Conrad and I joke about this one all the time, but Pokemon Go came out. Literally phone calls from lawyers. Right. You got to get, how do we do this Pokemon Go thing? I'm like, are you serious?
I mean, let's just start off by saying what doesn't work. The 5-minute abs, that doesn't work. Anything that seems either too good to be true or is immediate result or immediate payoff with minimal time, minimal investment. If you look at that whole equation, it really wouldn't make sense. I mean, this idea that if you had some honeypot, you can get this massive win and that only you and not every other law firm in America could see this amazing success without putting in any effort or time or any money. And that could be our little secret. That in itself, just keep scrolling. Just don't do that. But what else doesn't work?
Well, I think, you hinted at it a little bit. There's so much promise by the agency community of the 5-minute apps. Do this and triple your revenue. Do this, 10 easy steps to make this work. I've spent a career, Guy's spent a career figuring out every single nuance that we can to get our clients more clients, right? To make growth happen. There aren't those little secrets. So the notion that there's the 5 simple ways to get your law firm ranking to the top of Google, those things do not work. It is a hard slog in digital. Now, there are some cases where you have first mover advantage. LSAs come out. The people who jumped on LSAs really quickly, they were killing it. And as new technologies do come out, there is a benefit to having the flexibility to drop things and jump on those opportunities because no one else has figured it out. But that secret gets spilled very, very quickly, right? So there's value in it, but it dissipates really, really quickly as well.
You any other thoughts on anything that just doesn't work that people just avoid?
No, I'm with you. I say this all the time. I'm like, everything works for somebody. You can always find an example, even stuff where you're like, people can't be doing Yellow Pages ads. And it's like, guess what? In some communities, that's how people still use Yellow Pages ads. And then there's the other side of that coin is like something works for everybody, right? So there's something that will work for you if you find it. But, again, I think the days of just like, I'm just going to practice law, right? That's all I'm going to do. And then I hope that enough people sing my praises and talk about how good of a job I did. I think that's becoming much, much more difficult to do because of the way that the internet and social media has democratized information. The friction is gone. You can get referrals. You can go vet attorney. Speaking of Avo, lawyers hated it. They're going to be rated and they're going to have stars and client testimonials on Google business profiles. I can't stand that. People are actually going to like talk about me. And so to answer your question, the people who are like, I'm just going to put my head in the sand. I'm not going to deal with any of this stuff. Too much work. It's too many ethical problems. Those are the people that I think that's really not going to work. I don't think you're going to see a lot of those firms over the next 10, 15, 20 years, except for, there's some very niche practices where like, you're the only game in town. If you can find that can still work. But, you're trying to do a volume-based direct to consumer anything. I think it's going to be really hard to do it without some kind of like both strategy, tactics, discipline of doing that every day. And really, being online. We talk about this all the time too. I don't care what business you're in. You're online. You're in the internet business.
Now, there's a lot to unpack there. I want to delve into all of it. But I want to start with talking about kind of the difference between agency and the in-house model. And I'd love to get both of your perspectives on this in terms of just, it seems like the hybrid approach is probably what's best. I don't know that a law firm should outsource their entire marketing and this, let's say case generation function to any company just because like there needs to be some sense of ownership in-house as well. But then we also see law firms that say, I'm going to build out this whole in-house marketing team. And there's a lack of expertise, right? It's very, very surface level. It's a lot of generalists and that doesn't work. So what would you say is the ideal structure?
It's hard because this is a very easy to come across with a biased answer. But like Guy and I have a massive head start on every in-house pay-per-click person. because we've got the data. We're spending millions and millions of dollars a month, and we have access to, I know what works in PI. We already know. We don't have to learn that. We already know. We have the data, we have the models, we have the words, we have the negative words. Like, we've got a very sophisticated system. And it's not me, it's the agency world. There's a value in that. Staying up to speed on having a really solid SEO. You want to win in SEO, you have to be really, really good in legal, period. So that's a huge headcount, right? Running pay-per-click, like there's a lot of those expertise. To me, the ideal stack is, I really look at this as a leadership person in a law firm who has control over CRM system data and how data flows within those things to make sure that they are accountable for the accuracy of that data. And they are actually accountable for making sure that that data improves. But the tactical pieces, I think you want to outsource a lot of that from an expertise perspective. And the worst hire is the unicorn tactical person at $80,000 a year who is a C- on all of those pieces. You will die in legal if you try and play with that. Unless you're in the like North Poughkeepsie immigration law only for Spanish speakers market, right? But that's your worst hire.
Yeah, bunch of asterisks here, but
because you're an attorney.
Right. It depends. Let's assume that you're like, I want to take over this market in this practice area. You know, I want to be the PI person in this major metro. Yeah, it's hybrid. I mean, I can't, for a lot of the reasons that you just said. The biggest ones that come to mind are usually the economic metrics around the in-house team start to not add up, because for all the different skill sets you really need to be the dominant force, you're not finding that in one person. You're talking a team. So now and that's the other thing I always tell people is, people ask me, why don't I just do this in-house? And, this isn't just specific to law firms. Businesses all across the country, they have this same conversation with their internal teams all the time. And the internal team, there's a lot of strength that they have because they know the business, they're on the ground, especially in professional services, because they're right next to all the leaders. They know what the personality is. From a content development standpoint, they're going to tease out that message a lot better, I think, than a lot of agencies will. But then you compare that to the cost of a fractional resource that you get from an agency where you get all these different disciplines. That's why the hybrid makes so much sense. And to your point, I agree with you. The ones that are just like, look, I don't want anything to do with this. I'm not going to review and approve content. We're going to create fake avatars and buy fake reviews, and the agencies are all doing that stuff. Craziness, but we see it all the time. And that we could do a whole podcast on that, the dirty side of all this stuff. But that's where, Eric Turkowitz talks about this. You outsource your marketing, you outsource your ethics. Somebody that's in the business. By the way, lawyers are supposed to put, lawyer responsible for this ad, supposed to be on a lot of these things. Someone's got to be responsible for it. And I think it's a healthy dynamic to have in-house people working with outsourced providers, because you get that expertise, you're not paying for it full time, and you've got the people on the ground on the inside that really know the business who can help carry that through across the line.
I hope these conversations with Seth, Rory, Pat, John, Conrad, and Guy left you with actionable ways to improve your marketing strategies and boost your business for the long haul. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that I can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of my book absolutely free at GameChangingAttorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot me a text at 404-531-7691 and I'll answer any question that you've got for me. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it'll help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on this episode, see the show notes in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.